Good evening, Michigan. We have our special guest, Bill Mohr II, back here with us tonight. We're going to be touching a little bit on some research that I've garnered over the last couple days. As you guys know, I will never tell you anything to any specific matter that I cannot prove for fact. So tonight, I'm going to present you with information, and I encourage you guys. It's an example of always knowing what you're facing, whether it be vaccines, invasion of privacy, further the government further coming into your households when it involves your children. Any of these matters. Your best defense is to have your knowledge and know what your rights are and know what you're going to stand for. Because, and I know for the longest time, I've been a big choice person, and I tell you guys that you don't all have to be in this, but I'm changing my mind as of tonight because the general push behind everybody helping to save our country is done. It's over with. We need everybody. And I'm not just saying that based off of the information that I'm going to give you guys tonight. I'm just saying that as a whole. Um, you know, there's a lot of things that are going wrong right now. And if you look to other parts of our world, like Australia and different countries in Europe, it's way worse off than it is here for us right now. But that can be coming for us. Excuse me. And you all have to realize this. You really do. We need everybody to wake up like real quick because this is here. It's at our front doors. Their agenda is fully arriving to us. This isn't a conspiracy theory anymore. This isn't some, and nobody's here to save us. This is us. This is us. We're the people meeting in the taverns again. We're the people that want to live our lives and be free from the oppression of this tyrannical government that wants to take us over. That's what we've come back to. We've now come full circle. Now is the time. And we need everybody. It doesn't matter what level. We need all of you. This is extremely important. But I brought Bill back here with us tonight. First off, we are going to be talking about some things with our Second Amendment rights. And then we're going to be moving into the main topic tonight of some of the things that I have found in the last couple days uh, regarding vaccines and what could possibly be in these vaccines and things to that nature. So we'll be sharing that with you guys as well. But first, this is a topic that Bill, I know, is very passionate about, extremely passionate about. So we're actually going to let him, for the first little bit here, state his opinions on the Second Amendment and how his interpretation of said Second Amendment might differ from some other people that sit in these seats. You have the floor, Bill. Go ahead.
Well, you make it simple, Ethan. The Constitution was written by the people. It was written not only by lawyers, but by also the common man. And it was made to be understood by the common man in America. The Constitution doesn't need to be interpreted besides basic definitions of words. Phrases should not be misinterpreted. The Supreme Court does not have the authority to interpret our Constitution for us. It is plain, it is simple. And in the Second Amendment, everybody should know this one by heart. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, a lot of people look at that and they say, well, the militias really aren't that active. You don't see them around anymore. They're not being used. They're not being called on by the governors. While that might be true in a sense, that's not the backbone of the Second Amendment. Our Second Amendment, let me let me introduce this a new way. A friend of mine wrote this, and I thought it was very, very clever and very descriptive of it. He says, um, let's see, the right, I'm sorry, in a well balanced breakfast, the right of the people to keep and bear food shall not be infringed. You can take it a little further. A well balanced breakfast being necessary to the good of mankind or the health of mankind. The right of the people to keep and bear food shall not be infringed. Now, interpret it in that sense. Who has the right to keep and bear food? It most certainly is not the well balanced breakfast. It doesn't matter. It is the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And it's not only that, Ethan, but it is our duty as people in America to have enough arms sufficient for the protection of ourselves and the protection of our state. Without that, you do not have any security in any of these free sovereign states.
Absolutely, because and they I hate to be the guy that always harks back to the days of old, but if you ever were to end up in a situation where our National Guard is compromised in our state and our military as a whole has been compromised for whatever reason it might be, and because a lot of people always say, "Oh, well, what are you afraid that your government's gonna come in and take over?" And that may be a possibility, but on the other side of that, if if your country is fighting a good cause, let's say there's a war overseas or whatever have you, and you have the few good men that are still left at home, who, like I said, if your National Guard isn't in full effect, it isn't full and present in, let's say, Michigan's a prime example. Let's say for whatever reason, there's forces from another country that invade down through Canada. We still need that militia at home in whatever form it may be, whatever terms you want to put on it, or the numbers of people, or whatever the case may be. We still need that at home, and that is yet another thing that the Second Amendment is written for. The right to bear arms in our U.S. Constitution and our Michigan Constitution. It's reinforced in both, and that's just one example, but a good example of part of the reason why that's there. It's not always the argument of to defend the people from a tyrannical government. It's just to defend the people from enemies, foreign and domestic. That's why that's in there. But
Yeah, if you were to break that down in a local sense, in the state of Michigan, we have our militias defined by law. Now, not only do we have the right granted to us by God and secured through our federal constitution, but in our Michigan constitution, we have our amendment in Michigan stating that each person has the right to keep and bear arms for defense of himself and of the state. Um, and our militias are defined by our Michigan law. Our organized militia, we have two in the state of Michigan. We have our organized militia, which is considered now by the administration as our National Guard. And then we have our unorganized militia. And our unorganized militia consists of every able bodied person under the age of 65. And if we don't have the able bodied people, and we all know our National Guard has been compromised federally and been used on federal levels for wars outside of the state, then who do we have left to protect the state unless we have enough people who are willing, able, and ready at any given point?
yep, and I know especially up here in the northern part of the state, um, our our part of the Michigan militia is very active around here. And I've been guessing that depends demographically. Once you get down to the cities or whatever have you, but when you think about it, those are the areas where the reinforcement is needed more. And we have those things go away, and then the National Guard with the official title has to come into all these situations. You face things with like the situation. Why can I not think of his name? The teenage guy that shot the um over in Wisconsin. That shot the other two guys. The one that had a handgun, and the other was attacking him with the skateboard. I forget his
Yeah, I
name,
can't think of the name either
but
right now.
right, you run into situations like that where if you and people can be slightly right in a sense that the militia in what its true form is supposed to be has started to disappear over time. It doesn't mean that it's something that's obsolete or doesn't need to remain there. Because if you had more people that were officially titled through that method, you wouldn't even have to worry about situations like that. Because then you would know that you had well trained, regulated people that were overseeing events or um, protests or whatever the case may be. You wouldn't have a lot of the
Yep,
bad situations that you're having going on that are going on right now.
yep. And the militia is actually defined by our founding fathers to have certain roles. A militia is not just to go out there and just to show force whenever necessary, but militias are there to suppress insurrection, to repel invasion, and to execute the laws of the land.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where you come back to us not having a grand jury to speak of anymore. And that's where the checks and balances wane themselves out because, like we said before, you've had the government keeping the government in check for so long, and we the people not having an involvement with that and not being able to prosecute on our own terms in what we know to be the true law. And you're just taking, for however long you've just been nibble by nibble grabbing up the common man's right to protect himself against you.
Right.
But
And this bill, the bill that was just passed on the federal level, is a direct violation of everything we just talked about. They uh, they claim the right now at the federal level to take arms from veterans based on mental status. That could be construed to be a health status as well. And as we all know right now, the health status is a scary situation to be talking about with this, as I like to call it, coven that has gone around the past almost 2 years now. We've been in this. So to talk about somebody's health and see that at any point, you don't seem mentally capable of carrying firearms or even owning them, that we're just going to come knock on your door and take them from you.
well,
That's a clear
not even,
violation of.
not even mentally, but that just kicks open the door for them to, for any way that they see you unfit. But with once again back to the checks and balances, with them having to answer to themselves about why or why not they're taking away your guns from you.
Yep, and that's a clear violation of the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment. The list goes on and on, all wrapped up in one bill. I mean, how many? It's almost like a competition now to see how many they can violate without any
Right,
consequence.
and who they're doing it to. It's like you're really going to take our service members who go and it's okay for them to work for you because that's what they do. It's okay for them to work for you and shoulder that weapon in a foreign land and do the deeds of men like you and what you want them to do. But when they come home, remnants of what you may have caused them to be through or to be in, now you're going to say that for those reasons that were in turn caused because of you, the government, that they now can now own a firearm, whatever that may be. Even if they might get spooked by a firecracker, have slight shell shock.
Are they going to deem that them then not fit to be able to shoulder a firearm anymore because of slight shell shock, possibly? You know, the list
Yeah,
is absolutely endless to be at their discretion for this one.
yeah. Every little bit to them counts. Uh, I mean, when you have an agenda with and the ability of that agenda is to remove the Second Amendment, remove firearms from the population, they will take every liberal occasion that they can.
Absolutely, and especially with the current administration that's in place. You know, we, especially with, and there's a couple people on the right side of the aisle that I would have to think just didn't do their job. Once again, they're still ignorant in the fact that they didn't do their job and read through this because the title is very misleading. You know, you think it's a apportionment of finances for the year, the past year, or whatever situation you were presently dealing with, and but it comes back to knowing your job and doing your job successfully. And there's two people on that list in particular that come to my mind, and that's Jack Burkman and Madison Cawthorne, which I'm very disappointed, to say the least, in both of them with the stance that they take on many other things. You know, Madison Cawthorne, for example, had wanted to join the service before he wasn't able to, and um, oh, damn near every campaign video that he had a freaking firearm of some sort in his hands. And then Jack Bergman, who voted no on the council to investigate the January 6th incident at the Capitol, and who also was in favor of not certifying the election for Joe Biden in 2020 right off the bat. Both of them, that would be really nice to know. The only thing I can think of is that they didn't read it. I would really hope that they're, uh, not pumping with the IV of the swamp juice, but I'll leave that up to them to decide on that one because I thought them both a better character than that. Um, but anyway, back to the bill itself. Yes, unless you were absolutely lazy, which I'm glad to see that there were many representatives that was like, oh, I hope they didn't vote for this. Not because they're a Democrat or a Republican, but because of character. Because Joe Manchin actually breaks that mold as a reoccurring person that you really start asking yourself, man. But you seen on The View today, or was it yesterday? I don't know. It was a clip. They hung Joe Manchin out to dry on The View. And, it's a prime example of no matter what you're standing on, especially when it comes to gun rights, because that's what they were discussing on their little bird talk on their show, is when you get to firearms, there's a real sore spot when it comes to people like that. And then when you have a Democrat, Joe Manchin, who is not all for this fiscal year bill, and one of the reasons specifically is that he's citing the fact that you're trying to take any form of rights away from our veterans to own a firearm for any mental or any ailment that they might be caused. Uh, these people absolutely lose their minds, and it's prime example that it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's a Dem, a Republican, a Green Party, Taxpayers Party, Constitution Party. It doesn't matter. If you try to stand up for what's right and the principles of America, they're going to try to shut you down. You literally have a Democrat, once again, like I said, it doesn't matter, Joe Manchin, and they're absolutely tearing him to bits. And everybody knows that Whoopi and used to be Sharon was on there until she didn't want to rag on some guy for his political views, and she out the door. Uh, but they all get on there and they bicker amongst themselves, And it just really shows you that it doesn't matter who you are, that if you don't go with the agenda, you're in their sights. And that's how we know that this is a matter of good versus evil, not and right versus wrong, and not a matter of left and right, conservative and liberal. You know, and we have to be united on things like this, on things like the matter of defending ourselves. When anybody, when anybody might not be there, why it's like the guy having a heart attack. Are you gonna wait for somebody else to say, "Hey, that guy's having a heart attack. We should probably help him"? It's just like if somebody's breaking into your house. Am I gonna? I mean, I'm going to, but do I want to solely rely on, the guy next door saying, "Hey, you should probably call the cops and something's going on," and go over and see what's going on, or do I want to rely on myself if somebody breaks into my house to be able to immediately eliminate that threat to me and my family? I see it as absolutely no different. You wouldn't sit there and wait for a paramedic or a police officer to arrive on scene. You're going to try to help whoever might be in danger or in trouble at the moment in whatever way you can. Just like when it comes to defending you and yours. If somebody tries coming in my house, yeah, the cops are well and good. That's fine. If I don't have to kill the guy because he doesn't have a gun, if he has a knife or something, and I'm able to, whatever the case may be, that's one thing. But 9 times out of 10, he's going to try to want to come into his situation with his odds in his favor. So the fact of me being able to do that, and we're coming away from the militia topic, we're coming into the fact of just the right in itself. And that's one of the biggest part of it is, yes, we all want to think that we live in this cosmopolitan utopian society where nobody wants to stomp on anybody's feelings or anybody's right to pursue their happiness, but that stuff happens. And when those situations arise, when those people want to do things like that, like try to come and steal things out of my house, I want to be able to intervene in those matters and keep me and my family safe. The police are all well and fine. But in the meantime, we're going to have to deal with these situations. And it's going to happen.
That has always been one of my biggest fears, actually, Ethan. Most people that know me will know that I carry openly, and I let it be known. And that's mainly to let people know that I'm there. If a situation arises, I'm going to be one of the ones that stand up. But one of the greatest fears of mine is if somebody were to come into my house like that, and God forbid, I don't want to put anybody down. I would hate to have to pull the trigger with a human standing at the other end of that gun. And if that situation arose, I hope that I would be sound enough to be able to present the case to him rapidly that you don't have to do this, and be able to change his mind and turn him around. But when it comes down to my family's lives or an innocent person's life standing next to me, I will take down a threat if I had to. And that all falls under being able to keep and bear arms for the protection of oneself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. It's kind of like I've in any job I've ever had, for example, there's always things that I call preventative maintenance. And that is doing things or taking precautions of things that may or may not arise in the future. And that's how I always have referenced and represented the people's right to carry a firearm, to have a firearm, and to carry it full out, period, is because, yes, those situations may or may not ever arise. But in the situation or in the event that they do, the fact that you have the ability to neutralize, which there's countless, you could reference the church incident in Texas as one where it was, a completely fantastic thing that there was 5 men in that church that morning that were fully armed. And you could claim atrocities like the movie theater in Aurora, Texas. But the the fact of the matter is, in all of these cases, you can clearly tell that if somebody would have been armed with not just the tools, but the tools and the knowledge, like you said, to be able to maybe possibly, well, movie theater example, there wouldn't have been the opportunity for a situation like that. But still, being equipped with the weapon and with the knowledge to be able to handle a situation like that, when those things are introduced, a lot less people die. Well, let's put it completely frank.
Yep. And as the keywords go in the last couple of years here, if it only saves one, has been the cry through COVID. And if I can save 10 by taking out one, those 10 are worth it.
Absolutely. They have to. I mean, they don't have to because they never do. But it's an example of the hypocrisy. It, put this mask on to save one life. Here, make it so you can't breathe to save one life. Well, how about I walk around with my 45 on my side on a regular basis so that just in case I can save a life?
Right.
And it sounds so simple when you put it into terms like that. But this is the prime example of what they want to do back and forth with do it their way, do it their way, do it their way, do it their way. You're not going to get any give back your way. Those freedoms that are gone, you know what you're going to ever try to play to get those back? That's why, especially when it comes to things like our weapons, to defend ourselves for any reason, it doesn't matter, any reason that you feel your life or the life of your loved ones is in danger. Period, flat out. Anybody who wants to interpret it another way, involving muskets and machine guns and all these other things, I put barely any regard to those arguments. Because for me, at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that the majority, over 90% of guns that are purchased and bought throughout our country are not legally, are not involved in these high rates of crime that you see involving firearms on the streets and in society as a whole. They're not the ones that, it's the ones that have been bought and smuggled illegally and not put through proper procedures and had the serial numbers filed off of them. Instead of the harping and harping and harping, especially on things like the NRA, why aren't we putting more funding into matters of finding illegal firearms? And because they don't want that to stop. You can't have that stop because what's the phrase? You can't let a good crisis go to waste. Is one of their favorite phrases. So of course you can't take the guns out of the inner cities, even though we want to ban them in Chicago, but put no effort into actually getting them out of the criminals' hands in Chicago. These failed plans over and over and over. It's just absolute lunacy. And when it comes to our firearms, like we were saying, this is one of our last stands because it's coming. They're doing it to the military currently. They can scan you or evaluate you or whatever they're going to do, these men and women that serve our country, they're going to do it to anybody. They're only starting with them because, like I said before, when you're a member of the military, they own you. Or when you get services from them, like Veteran Affairs and, the VA and all that, they still own you. So they're going to put you up to that scrupulation. And
Yeah, that may end up being one of the requirements for the VA as well. There are a lot of veterans out there, and I think everyone that has served or is currently serving, but there are a lot out there that have certain medical conditions they rely on treatment from the VA, and the way this is falling down is they're going to end up using the VA to fully implement this plan. That as simple as just denying medical service for those who are, now felons because they didn't turn in their weapons after the VA considered them incapable of owning them. And once you deny them medical care, what can they do? And you pretty much got them backed into a corner. And I mean, as funny as this sounds, it's not a very good idea to back a veteran in a corner, no matter how you look at it.
yeah, you disassembled him and rebuilt him bigger, badder, faster, meaner. So they should know better than anybody. Um, but the other thing is too dealing with that to kind of lead into the second thing here tonight, to try to save on our time a little bit, is how much longer until that incorporates things like vaccines. And, oh, you have to do this, or we're going to put it listed under, oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. You have delusions that the government is against you. So now, and it's not a laughing matter, but the ridiculousness of it sometimes is. You're an anti-vaxxer. You have delusions that the government is out to get you, so now you can't own a firearm.
Yep, and you could see that just as clear as day early on with the mask.
Yeah,
The mask is a prime example of something as simple as that.
right.
And for those that are just waking up to this idea of them using the vaccine as a weapon against the American people, I mean, it was made clear there were certain things you couldn't buy. There were certain things you couldn't do without a mask. And that's going to be the same way coming to vaccine. It's already been started, and in other countries, it's already implemented. So that's always something to keep an eye on. I mean, be ready for it, even though it hasn't happened yet. Look at other nations; they're doing it.
Yeah, Australia. I just watched a clip the other day where they literally tackled this guy and physically put a mask on his face. I'm like, what? Like, I mean, like we've been saying, not here yet. But, I mean, I never thought that I'd see something that asinine and that ridiculous in my life, period. They literally, that he was already in handcuffs and was struggling. And they were struggling back. And I'm at first, for a split second, because then you can see the mask in the other officer's hands. But for a second, I'm like, they already got him up on his feet. He's already in cuffs, what? And it was because they were trying to force a mask on his face. And I'm just like, what? This is, I mean, it didn't surprise me in the fact of what's going on in Australia right now because it's absolutely ludicrous. I just seen another video earlier where there was a health worker that was through, from what I gathered, she was through the police department there by Sydney in Australia. And because of a woman's post on social media, they had been scanning through hers or people's in general or whatever social media posts, and she had been posting about a picnic that X amount of people were going to be attending and screw their mandates and blah, blah, blah. And they showed up at her house and they were like, oh, we've seen this online and we're just letting you know that you're not allowed to leave your house. If there's going to be a picnic or not going to be a picnic, we're just letting you know that you're still not allowed to leave your house. And I'm like, oh my God, man. And, you know, if you get the vaccine, everything's all peachy keen. If you get the vaccine, everything's all right. It's just like here. If you have the vaccine, even here in America, you're, yeah, it's not that people are, or, you know, businesses are all doing that where they're turning you away if you don't have vaccination. I know that there are concerts and whatever have you going on where you do have to show proof of vaccination or you get discounted tickets or whatever the case may be if you show proof of vaccination. Uh, but it's not a far cry at all from what we're going to be looking at here in the future shortly. What we're seeing
And
overseas.
just a side note, Ethan, this is not new. A vaccine mandate is not new. Anybody that's been around for the last 4 generations would understand this. Anybody who's been around the public school system, is that you were required as a child upon your enrollment in a public school system, you had to show your proof of all these different vaccines that you've taken. And up to this point, there were certain exemptions that you could file with the schools, and that was okay. But this whole time, they've been priming up to this point. And now we've seen that a lot of those exemptions don't even exist. They've been denying them left and right.
And
So it's not new. It's just people are
right,
finally seeing it because it's affecting them.
right. And, you know, it's funny you say that because I bring that example up to people all the time. I'm like, okay, so when it comes to schools, I'm like, so just, with what California just recently did, with what Newsom did out there with all the kids. Like, okay, so you had people on the left, mainly, I won't say all, or that there's not some from the right, but mainly people on the left that wanted the, especially the religious exemption because you're supposed to be all encompassing and everybody's supposed to be treated equal. So that's where a good majority of the religious exemptions in the first place came from these vaccine cards and these vaccine requirements that they wanted you to have in school. And now you're seeing the same push again, mainly from left leaning, that get it or else. And it's like, can you not tell and see that little chip at a time, little chip at a time, little chip at a time, that your freedoms go away, your culture goes away, your rights and liberties go away. And as soon as they infiltrate us completely with these vaccines and get their way with these vaccines and know exactly how much control they can have over our population as a whole, you have people turning on each other, neighbor against neighbor, because one wants to wear a mask and the other don't want to wear a mask. You have kids in school that when they're in band class and they play their instruments, they have a little square cut out in the front of their mask, and it's like that is, or people driving and they're in the car by themselves. It's like that's all psychological. That is absolutely, there is no science in that. That is completely either uh, just for comfort or, like I said, the psychological aspect as a whole, and you biting into the normalcy factor of that situation. I know 3-year-old kids that think that people, it's just normal for people to walk around with masks because for the last 2 years of their lives, I know, right? Heartbreaking. Absolutely, absolutely heartbreaking. And because for the last 2 years of their life, that they've known things and been aware to the environment around them That's what it's been. And if for that to happen, that's just the lower aspect of the spectrum with that. Um, but a couple of the things that I wanted to show everybody tonight was there's been a lot of um, reports and reports of testing being done um, with these different vaccines and then being examined in different ways. Uh, the first thing, and I won't share the whole video with you guys tonight, but you guys will be able to um, go to the website if you want. It is redvoicemedia.com. You can see it there right at the top. And this doctor that was on here, she, along with a few of her other colleagues, had actually examined um, numerous. They made sure that they tested multiple samples from each vaccine under a microscope on a microscopic level to see what was in these vaccines, what they could find present. Uh, and some of the things, hey, what's up, Steven? Glad you can make it in here. Make sure to share this out 5 times. I always ask everybody, share it out 5 times. Share it to your mom, your dad, your uncle, your cousin that's in prison. Doesn't matter. Share it out there. We got to make sure that everybody has good information, unbiased information for you guys. But redvoicemedia.com will get you guys there. And she found very interesting things in these samples. Long story short, some of them being metallic aspects and some seeming to be organisms of sort that seem to be self-aware. They could stand up off of the microscope slide, it seemed, on their own. She knew that they were using these tentacle structures, whatever, seemed to be legs standing up off of the slide. Um, you guys can check that out as well. She could not identify if it was graphene itself, as some of the reports we've been getting recently about high levels of graphene being found in the samples from these vaccines. But it led me to wonder why, if graphene oxide, which is being said to be found in abundance in these vaccines, what would cause the toxicity level, if it's uniform across the board with how these are made, what would cause the toxicity level to fluctuate to where some people would die and or have certain complications and others wouldn't. And one of the interesting things that I had found was this video on graphene nanobots. And these things, these little buggers, are no bigger, no thicker than a human hair off of your head. I will try to get this link in the description for you guys once the live is over. Or I believe it's on my page. Yes, it is. It's on my page as well. They actually deleted everything that I tried posting the first time, and I was able to get it back from somebody who had already shared it from my original post. But these graphene nanobots, their base is graphene. The other majority of them is made out of platinum. This video is copyrighted for 2020. They would have you believe at the end of even this video that them being used for human implementation is about another 10 years off. But then there is other articles from scientific journals and medical journals that have cited them being used as early as 2016 in certain procedures. So, them being graphene based would, once again, none of this being absolute for you guys, just to have everybody think a little bit about why there is such a push worldwide for these things to happen, for these things to be injected into our bodies, for us to not have a say in the matters of if we don't want our children to have it, like in California right now, if we don't want our children to have it, then they can't go to school. They can't go to daycare. We deserve to know what is exactly in these things. But one of the main competing companies that I had found from 2018 was this company that you see here at the top of this chart, which is named Oxford Nanopore Technologies. They're funded for about $679 million. One of their funders being the Construction Bank of China, which we'll dabble in here at the end. Now, one of the weird things about this company, Oxford Nanopore Technologies, is the fact that it says here Oxford Nanopore, whose DNA sequencing technology has been essential in tracking COVID-19 variants around the world, completed a highly successful IPO, which is in public opportunity, September 30th, 2021. So the highest funded nanotechnology company in the entire world is leading the charge on keeping track of COVID variants around the world. Once again, just information that I had found on various things that I wanted everybody else to be able to share, and be able to go back to some of these. If you don't catch any of these, you're more than welcome to message me at any time, or I try to get them all, but if I miss them in a video, I apologize to you guys. One of the things that I wanted you guys to see here was one of the major things they were approved funding for is a thing called optogenetics. And along with a slew of other things, including genetic engineering, digital genome, immune engineering, gene editing. But one of the important ones to note is the optogenetics. And when referring to these nanobots, what optogenetics are is the ability to go to a certain location, or specifically in this being the brain, and make certain things occur based on where the nanobots are in the brain. But optogenetics is a technology that allows targeted, fast control of precisely defined events in biological systems as complex as freely moving mammals by delivering optical control at the speed of light, millisecond scale, and with precision, cell by cell type specific scale. And one of the ways that this is done is through a level of blue light, as you can see here. You can actually have the electrical stimulation, the separate light stimulation, and they won't do the same processes until you put them together. Now, one of the things these about these nanobots is one of the only things that they emit off of them is an electrical impulse, which is the same signal given off by our brain, the same signal given off by our heart and our heart rate. And as you can see, a couple of the other things that we have up on the screen currently is another reference to optogenetics, which is controlling the brain with light. And the main light that is used in optogenetics is blue light. The same type of blue light that's given off by your cell phone, your laptop, these LED lights that are in front of me as I stream to you guys. And as you can see here, it says the blue light used in optogenetics experiments alters gene expression in microglia, the brain's immune cells. Tiny pulses of blue light dampen the expression of inflammatory genes in microglia, the immune cells of the brain. So, if these things are introduced into your body, and one of the things they're being approved for and being funded for being optogenetics, among many others, then how are they being used for optogenetics? And just like I had said many numerous times earlier, the levels of graphene in these not being able to be explained uniform across the board, why everybody, because it is a toxic metal to the body, but it had made me wonder why everybody wasn't acting exactly the same to it. This is another article that I had found pertaining to nanobots, and if you visit the website that they reference here with the nanotech.com, it gives you the exact definitions of everything that they talk about in the article. This is just part of one chapter from a book, but it clearly says that there's a reason why these nanobots are called a smart vaccine. It is the counterpart to the B cells or T cells in the human immunity system. We can also compare it to the neurons that transfer sensory and motor signals to and from the brain. So these nanobots that they program to be these, quote, smart vaccines, they can actually make them mimic down to a cellular level. Which on the one video, when you watch it, you can actually see that a single-celled microbial is actually bigger, much bigger, than one of these nanobots. And they claim that these articles, or that these nanobots are a far cry off from being able to do things like this. But if you refer to my congressional page, Hobson for House 2022, that you're probably watching this from right now, you'll be able to see everything that I've found on these graphene nanobots that I haven't given you guys tonight. One of the last things I'd like to share with you guys also before we get out of here is the investment list for this Oxford Nanopore Technologies as well. And one of them, as I stated earlier, being the China Construction Bank. And with a little research of the China Construction Bank, you figure out that it was founded by the Ministry of Finance of the People's Republic of China, and that still stands to this day. So their grubby little fingers are in on this, company, the Ministry of Finance, and they your feeds keep lagging out. Probably Facebook. Steven told me. Oh yeah, I would not doubt that. I would not doubt that at all. Steven also said, yeah, just wait until the 5G is widespread. And see, that's the other thing, is these micropulses that will be given out by these 5G towers. Who's not to say that those aren't the interfaces? They're going to be on everybody's block. They're going to be on every corner that you turn. They're going to be pummeling you. They want to talk that your cell phone only gives off 1 watt of radiation at any given moment, which that's false in itself. It's at least 3, even at complete rest. But the point being that we're not talking about 1 or 2 or 1,000 people's cell phones at one time. We're talking about one of these ginormous towers, no matter how much you want to try to hide them as pine trees and palm trees and cactuses and everything else. That's what we're talking about. But before I go off on that, that will definitely be another episode for us on another day. Any thoughts on this, Bill, as a bystander who I barely showed any of this to before we got on air?
Well, it's not hidden anymore, Ethan. This has been a cry over the last probably 2 decades that I've known. Hearing people talk about vaccines, hearing people talk about cell phone networks as it was improving, and the story's out. I mean, it can all be researched just like you showed. It's all public knowledge, and it's up to the people to be able to understand this and to be able to have the proper knowledge to be able to fight back against it.
Right. It's like, numerous times, once again, I'll never bring you guys anything and say this is absolute fact if I can't ever say that it's absolute fact. But I wanted to bring you guys these things to try to spark something to make you guys think more, to think critically, because that's one of the biggest things that they're taking away from us nowadays is our cognitive ability to think critically. That's what they don't want us doing, because that's when we can start to think for ourselves and do for ourselves and know that we don't need their overbearing over top of us on a constant, regular basis, coming more and more in. But that's what this episode tonight is, along with, I do fully find, I find a lot of this very intriguing in these last few days that I've been looking at this, especially when it comes to that smart vaccine article. I also, a few that I didn't get to show you guys tonight that you'll probably find in your own research, is a few scientists actually submitting applications to the government about how nanotechnology with nanoparticles and nanobots is so much better than vaccines. Did they get an answer back? We don't know. But That's what this will get you guys. Is if it's just one. It only takes one thing. Tonight, you guys have seen that, you know, these reports keep coming out, especially with that lady talking about the metal fragments in the vaccine um, that she had studied on the slides, that it contained metal fragments, numerous reports of graphene in these vaccines. And if it's not killing everybody, if it's not affecting everybody exactly the same, then how is it going about in our bodies, and exactly is it doing? And these nanobots, remember, they can be programmed to go to certain places in the body to do certain tasks and certain duties and certain jobs in the body, and they emit the same electromagnetic pulse rhythm as our heartbeat does. It's a lot of coincidences, and I've always been one to say that one is a coincidence, two is by chance, three is a pattern. Um, and it is just a lot of interesting things, a lot of interesting lines that could possibly be drawn there to these different things, especially when you find articles saying that um, they have found less invasive ways to do these procedures, to where they can just let them crawl up through your nasal cavity, and then they'll be in there and they can be turned on and turned off. Doesn't elaborate on how they can be turned on and off, but they can be. Just lots of things for you guys to look at and to make you guys start thinking more into these situations and tear these things apart. Never accept the official story. Take what I've given you tonight and tear it to shreds, please. Give me all kinds of documents that you find that prove me absolutely wrong about all these things. I love it because it furthers my knowledge. And that's why that's why I always tell you guys to question everything. I love learning new stuff. I try learning something new every single day, and that's why I try bringing you guys as much information as possible and try getting you guys out there and thinking and fighting more and more and more. The more myself and my guests come to you uh, to try to let you guys know that if you feel certain ways, doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter if you're in a teachers union, doesn't matter if you live in a state like California, doesn't matter if you voted for Trump or if you voted for Biden or if you voted for Don Blankenship, doesn't matter. As long as we can all stand together and say that we're going to fight for our freedom and our right to live the way that we want to live, so long as we're not hurting another person, then we're in this together. If you want to fight against that, then you're my enemy. Plain flat out, ain't no two ways about it. But if we're in this together and you're in the fight with all of us to save our freedoms and to save our liberties and our way of life, then welcome to the posse. We love having you. But I think that might do it for tonight's episode as well. Been with you guys for a little over an hour. It's been a while since I've gotten to have an hour show with you guys. It's been great. Had a little cancellation again tonight, but I appreciate Bill coming on here. We didn't get to quite finish our episode the other day anyway, did we, Bill?
No, we didn't. I wanted to say one thing too, Ethan. You've been doing a great job here. If anything, keeping information alive. And it was James Madison who told us that knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power which knowledge gives.
Absolutely fantastic. That is one that I actually had not heard before. Usually I know a lot of that stuff, and I actually did not know that. And Stephen over here, scrutiny can sometimes lead to confirmation, but most will likely just write it off as conspiracy. And, that's fine too. If somebody can, because like this woman on this video, she has studied um, the vaccine and a number of her colleagues on a microscopic level and has confirmed that there are some form of something under its own power in there and some form of metallic substance. So if anybody is able to, give me a complete ingredient list and say, see, there's no graphene of, any kind in here, and uh, they admit that they use nanotechnology in these vaccines. They fully admit that, but they say that it's nanoparticles that don't do the same job as nanobots. It doesn't work the same way as what they say. That's the extent of what I was able to find on that whole subject of it. Um, but yes, if you guys are, if you label as a conspiracy theory, please, I always encourage you to prove me wrong. It's always a fantastic thing. I love learning. But that'll do it for us tonight, you guys. And I thank all of you guys for being here. If you guys haven't yet, please follow the page. If you guys are watching this from YouTube here in the near future, please hit that subscribe button down at the bottom. We always try to do these in one take for you guys, as raw and uncut as possible. Just bringing you guys as much truth as humanly possible to try to make sure that you guys are always equipped. It's not much at the moment, but I have successfully made my Gab pages and my locals pages. If you guys are members of those communities, if you want to go over there and follow me on locals or on Gab, I would greatly appreciate it. Any love and support, Cash App is above. Never a must, but I always appreciate anything that I ever get from you guys. Whether it's $1, whether it's $5, is always fantastic because it always lets me know that what I'm doing is actually doing something for all of you guys out there. So it's like I always tell you guys, we'll see you next time. Stay safe and stay informed out there.